You hear it before you see it. A low rumble in the dark. Something massive shifting its weight just beyond the firelight. And then nothing. Silence. The sound of something very large deciding to leave. For most of human history, that was the relationship. Not humans fleeing predators. Predators fleeing humans. The cave lion, the giant hyena, the dire wolf, the short-faced bear creatures that could kill a modern human in seconds consistently back down from something far smaller and physically weaker than themselves. That is not the story you were taught. But the bones don't lie. Here is what the fossil record actually shows. For roughly the last 2 million years, as your ancestors spread across Africa, Europe, and Asia, the megafauna, the giant animals, began disappearing. Not from climate change alone. Not from disease. From humans. A species with no claws, no fangs, no armored hide, and no real speed drove the most powerful animals on the planet into retreat and, eventually, extinction. The question is not whether it happened. It did. The question is how. What did ancient humans have that made the deadliest beasts on Earth afraid? The first answer is one that surprises most people. It was not weapons. Not at first. Long before the spear, long before the bow, your ancestors had something no other predator on Earth possessed: the ability to chase prey to the point of collapse. Anthropologist Daniel Lieberman at Harvard University has spent decades studying what he calls persistence hunting, and what he found rewrites everything you think you know about human weakness. Your body was not built to fight. It was built to run. Not fast. Far. You have no fur, which means you can sweat. Every other large mammal on the savanna overheats within minutes of sustained running. Lions, leopards, wild dogs, they sprint, kill, and stop. They have no choice. But your ancestors could run at a moderate pace for 2, 3, 4 hours in midday heat without stopping. They would track a single animal, a zebra, a wildebeest, an antelope across the open plain, following it by reading its tracks, watching its gait for signs of heat exhaustion, and never letting it rest. The prey animal would eventually simply stop and stand still, overheated and trembling, waiting to die. That is not a metaphor. That is how it worked. Researcher Louis Liebenberg documented this technique still in use among the San people of the Kalahari as recently as the 1980s. He filmed men in their 40s and 50s running down kudu, one of the fastest antelope on Earth, in temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius. The kudu was physically dominant in every measurable way. It lost anyway. But persistence hunting only explains how your ancestors caught prey. It does not explain why predators feared them. For that, you have to understand something about how animal intelligence works. Large predators are not stupid. They are, in fact, highly capable of learning and updating their behavior based on experience. A lion that has been hit with a throwing stone once will associate the sight of an upright walking biped with pain and threat. A pack of hyenas that has been driven off a kill by a group of screaming, fire-wielding hominins learns to avoid those creatures. And here is the key. Predators do a constant cost-benefit calculation. Every act of aggression carries a risk of injury. A broken jaw, a damaged eye, a deep wound to the leg, any of these can mean death by starvation for a wild predator. So the question a cave lion asks, at a deep neurological level, is not, can I win this fight? It is this fight worth the risk? And ancient humans, even small groups of them, were consistently not worth the risk. Here is why. Your ancestors were cooperators, in a way no other species on Earth was. Not just social, deeply, uniquely, flexibly cooperative with strangers. Anthropologist Kim Sterelny has argued that this capacity for large-scale cooperation was the single defining trait that separated hominins from every other intelligent species. A wolf pack will cooperate, but only with its own family. Your ancestors cooperated with individuals they had never met, coordinated across groups, and shared information about threats across wide territories. What this meant in practice was that an animal that attacked one human was, effectively, attacking all of them. There is evidence from sites like Pinnacle Point in South Africa, dated to around 165,000 years ago, that your ancestors were already organizing group hunting activities that required sustained coordination across multiple individuals over multiple days. The tools found at these sites, carefully shaped hafted blades, compound adhesives made from multiple materials, required knowledge transmission across generations, not just individual skill. A single cave lion attacking a lone human was taking a manageable risk. A cave lion entering territory where 15 cooperating humans with throwing spears, fire, and generational knowledge of the landscape were operating was taking a very different calculation. And fire changed everything. Most animals have a deeply hardwired fear of fire. It is not learned. It is ancient, embedded so deep in animal neurology that even animals who have never encountered fire will retreat from it. Your ancestors controlled fire. The evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa pushes this back at least 1 million years, and that meant they carried with them the one thing every predator on Earth feared at a cellular level. A group of hominins sitting around a fire at night was, from the perspective of every predator in the vicinity, an incomprehensible object. Something that produced fire but was not consumed by it. Something that moved fire intentionally, waved it, threw it. This was not a prey animal. This was not a predator. This was something entirely outside the learned categories of the animal mind. The behavioral result was avoidance. Consistent, persistent avoidance. Paleoanthropologist Pat Shipman has documented what she calls the animal connection hypothesis, the idea that your ancestors' ability to read animal behavior, track individual animals over days, communicate about those animals using early language, and coordinate responses to threats created a feedback loop that no other species could match. They were not just reacting to predators. They were modeling predator behavior, predicting it, and countering it before it happened. That is not just intelligence. That is a fundamentally different relationship with the world. A cave hyena does not wonder what you will do next. Your ancestor did wonder what the hyena would do next, and planned for 3 different answers. This asymmetry in cognitive flexibility is what ultimately broke the predator-prey relationship entirely. In the Pleistocene, as your ancestors spread out of Africa and into Europe and Asia, the megafauna they encountered had never seen anything like them. The woolly mammoth had no inherited fear of upright walking bipeds with fire and coordinated group behavior. It had no prior experience with creatures who could communicate across distance using sound, who could plan an ambush days in advance, who could herd prey animals off cliffs. The mammoths, the cave bears, the giant ground sloths of the Americas, they were not outcompeted. They were encountered by a cognitive system they had no framework for. They did not know to be afraid until it was too late. And this is the counterintuitive truth at the center of your own story. You were never the strongest creature on the prehistoric savanna. You were never the fastest, the most armored, the most fearsome in the conventional sense. What you were was the most unpredictable, the most cooperative, the most capable of sustained, coordinated threat that any animal had ever encountered in the history of life on Earth. Fear, it turns out, is not about size. It is not about claws or fangs or raw muscle. Fear is about unpredictability. Fear is about encountering something your nervous system has no script for. And every predator that saw your ancestors small, slow, soft-bodied, standing upright in the open with fire in their hands, making incomprehensible sounds to each other, never retreating, had no script for what they were looking at. So they left. The next time you feel physically small in a world that seems built for bigger, stronger things, remember that the most dangerous creature your ancestors ever shared the earth with did not run from their claws. It ran from the thing behind their eyes. And you carry that same thing